प्रातः स्मरामि हृदि संस्फुरदात्मतत्त्वम् सच्चित्सुखं परमहं सगतिं तुरीयम् यत्स्वप्नजागरसुषुप्तिमवैति नित्यं तद्ब्रह्म निष्कलमहं न च भूतसङ्गः तपोभिक्षीणपापानां शान्तानां वीतरागिणां मुमुक्षूणामपेक्षोऽयम् आत्मबोधो विधीयते बोधोऽन्यसाधनेभ्यो हि साक्षान्मोक्षैकसाधनम् पाकस्य वह्निवज्ञानं विना मोक्षो न सिद्ध्यति. Okay, are there any questions? You're able to unmute yourselves, right? Anyone? You're able to unmute yourselves? Yeah, you can unmute yourselves. Okay. Are there any questions? Okay, we'll chant from verses 42 to 46, 42 to 46 of chapter 2. यामिमां पुष्पितां वाचं प्रवदन्त्यविपश्चितः वेदवादरताः पार्थ नान्यदस्तीति वादिनः कामात्मानस्वर्गपराः जन्मकर्मफलप्रदां क्रियाविशेषबहुलां भोगैश्वर्यगतिं प्रति भोगैश्वर्यप्रसक्तानां तयापहृतचेतसां व्यवसायात्मिका बुद्धिः समाधौ न विधीयते. त्रैगुण्यविषया वेदाः निस्त्रैगुण्यो भवार्जुन निर्द्वन्द्वो नित्यसत्त्वस्तः निर्योगक्षेम आत्मवान्. त्रैगुण्यविषया वेदाः निस्त्रैगुण्यो भवार्जुन निर्द्वन्द्वो नित्यसत्त्वस्तः निर्योगक्षेम आत्मवान्. यावानर्थ उपदाने सर्वतः सम्प्लुदोदके तावान् सर्वेषु वेदेषु ब्राह्मणस्य विजानतः. यावानर्थ उपदाने सर्वतः सम्प्लुतोदके तावान् सर्वेषु वेदेषु ब्राह्मणस्य विजानतः. Okay, we were discussing chapter 2 verse 42, 43, 44. These verses came together and we had started our discussion on them. We're on the topic of karma yoga. Karma yoga is the path of action. Yoga is the spiritual path. Another name for the spiritual path is yoga. Yoga is an integrated journey of multiple spiritual disciplines. Please listen to this. Yoga is an integrated journey of multiple spiritual disciplines. For every aspect of your personality, there is a yoga. For every aspect of the personality, there is a yoga. The idea of yoga is how to turn everything into worship, how to turn everything into a spiritual activity. Spiritual action should not be limited to muttering prayers in a prayer room. It should not be limited to any day of the week. It should not be limited to any particular action. How to turn your entire life divine. That is the spiritual journey. So yoga helps us turn every thought, word, and deed into worship. Broadly speaking, when we look at the aspects of a personality, there is the body, the mind, the intellect. Broadly speaking, there is the body, the mind, and the intellect. For the body, you have karma yoga, because the body is engaged in action. The body is engaged in activity. So for the body and its actions, there is karma yoga. How to dedicate your body in this world, what to do with it. The purpose of life is not to simply cater to this body. The purpose of life is not to simply chase sense gratification. Although there's no harm in sense gratification. There's no problem. Anyone who says there's a problem in sense gratification has not understood the truth. It is not a sin to cater to your senses. See, all the Swamis, they're afraid of people's gaze. They come to your house. They'll never ask for seconds, not because they don't want seconds, because you're going to judge them. Swami eating a seconds? He's supposed to be a renunciate. He's not supposed to want. I'm half joking, but the idea is that there is no limit on the quantum of sense gratification. That's not renunciation, right? So catering to your senses is not wrong, but if that is the be all and end all of your life, if that's all you can think about and care about and value, that is called mundane. It's mundane. And it'll lead you down the wrong path. Anyway, I'm not going to get into that. The idea is karma yoga is the spiritual discipline for your body. What to do with this body, what to do with your senses, right? The path of action, the yoga of action, that's why it's called karma yoga. We'll talk more about it. For the mind and its emotions, its feelings, you have bhakti yoga. Bhakti yoga is the path of devotion, the path of love, the path of emotion. What to do with your mind? The purpose of the mind is, again, not to simply cater to your desires and your wants and your feelings and everyone should love you. In fact, it's the exact opposite. You don't use your mind to simply cater to your ego. In Bhakti Yoga, you dissolve the ego. You lose yourself in the divine. We'll talk much more about that. But it's a beautiful journey of Bhakti. And for your intellect and its thoughts, what do you do with your thoughts, ideas? What do you do with this incredible capacity to think, reason, judge, decide? You dedicate it to Jnana Yoga, the path of knowledge. What we are doing right now, we could have been doing multiple things right now. What are we dedicating our intellect to? To thinking about the divine, to contemplating upon the reality, upon the truth, to studying the scriptural message, to try to understand it and adopt it in our life. That is Jnana Yoga. So, how to turn every aspect of your life into worship? You do it through karma, bhakti, jnana. Beyond this, of course, there are many multiple yogas which, if you think about it, you can relate it to any one of these three. There's also Hatha Yoga. Hatha Yoga, which we more commonly know as yoga. In fact, if you ever read the Vedanta treatise, he has a very interesting perspective out there. I talked about body, mind, and intellect. For your body, you do karma. For your mind, you do bhakti. For your buddhi, you do jnanam. But what if your body is sluggish, your mind is sleepy, your intellect is unavailable? To slap it into waking, to shake it up, to bring it into awareness, you need Hatha Yoga. We have bodies, but this lazy and lethargic. We have minds, but they are dull and unaware. We have intellects, but they are not utilized. So to bring ourselves into, to shake us into a state of awareness, to bring vitality into the body, the mind, and intellect, so that you can use them for something productive, you have Hatha Yoga. So the spiritual path begins with Hatha Yoga. It doesn't end with Hatha Yoga. So it's important that as practitioners of yoga, you understand all of these things. Hatha Yoga is what you practice, the asanas and the different postures and the pranayams, right? All of that comes into the branch of Hatha Yoga. So all together, there's of course other things called Dhyana Yoga. Dhyana Yoga is meditation. The meditation is the culmination of the spiritual path. There is something called Raja Yoga. Now, Raja Yoga, people will, argue about it, and you can relate it to aspects of bhakti and aspects of jnanam as well. It's a more sort of mystical perspective. But point is, as a spiritual practitioner, it's like, as an introductory class, what you need to know, the essentials, the bare minimum you have to do in your life if you want to grow spiritually is karma, bhakti, jnana, and hatha. Karma, bhakti, jnana, and hatha are essential for your spiritual journey. So here we're talking about karma yoga. What is karma yoga? Very few people know what karma yoga actually is. People think karma yoga is doing some seva, feeding some people on a particular day, doing some particular rituals and rites, feeding 100 Brahmins. And all of those is well and good. But karma yoga is beyond all of these. Karma lies in the thought backing the action, not the action itself. Right? In this he said, in the previous verse he said, in this the intellect is resolute. In karma yoga, the intellect is resolute and one-pointed. So there is a clear goal towards which you are working. There is a clear conception of something you want to dedicate your life to. There is a clear motive, a clear purpose beyond your selfish and mundane interests. That is karma. What are you dedicating yourself to? What goal are you dedicating yourself to? And so in verse number 42, 43, and 44, which we touched upon last time, I'm not going to chant it again. He says, the unwise utter flowery speech, rejoicing in the letter of the Vedas, O Partha, saying there is nothing other than this. Who is the unwise? We all have heard multiple people, maybe ourselves, saying the Vedas are the grandest of knowledge. The Vedas contain the entire wisdom of humanity. What do they contain? Very few people actually bother to study them. And when you don't study something, when you have half-baked knowledge, you give the importance to the wrong things, so you don't understand things in its depth, in their proper perspective. So he says, the unwise utter flowery speech. Flowery means they say big things. They use glorious words to eulogize the Vedas, saying there is nothing else than this. Obsessed with desires with heaven as the ultimate goal of birth and action, they prescribe many specific rites for attainment of pleasure and power. Those who are attached to pleasure and power, whose minds are drawn away by that flowery speech, they have no determined intellect fixed in samadhi, God consciousness. So what's he saying? This is satire. Here, remember, Lord Krishna is speaking, but who is the author of the Mahabharata? Who is writing this actually? It's Veda Vyas. Veda Vyas is the author of these words. And through Krishna, he is sharing some satire against the Vedas. Apparently against the Vedas. He seems to be attacking the Vedas. It's the same Ved Vyas who's dedicated his entire life to compiling the Vedas. So it's ironic. The same Ved Vyas who dedicated his life to compiling the Vedas, to bringing them to a shape and form where they can be accessed by all of us, even today. The reason the Vedas are accessible is because they have been arranged. They have been made available. They have been codified. Right? So Ved Vyas arranged the Vedas. They compiled the Vedas. But out here, he seems to be attacking them. He seems to be mocking them almost. Very interesting. this is also, in the Bhaja Govindam, if you've ever said the Bhaja Govindam, Adi Shankaracharya is mocking sannyasis. Adi Shankaracharya, who is a sannyasi himself, who started the path of the Ocker robes, essentially. He created the entire tradition of Ocker robes. He's mocking those. He says, Jatilo Mundi Lunchita Keshaha Kashayambara Bahukrita Vesha. Wearing matted locks and with beards and without clothes and with ribs sticking out because you've not eaten for days. You have all sorts of bahukrita vesha. You adopt a lot of vesha, a lot of appearances. Pashyan napichana pashyati mudo yudur nimitta bahukrita vesha. So it's only for the sake of your belly, not for anything else, that you're adopting all of these vesha, all these appearances. So in the Bhaja Govindam, Adi Shankaracharya is mocking sannyasis who have taken up the spiritual path for the wrong purpose, who have taken up the spiritual path with the wrong intention. Similarly, out here, Ved Vyas is mocking those who utter flowery speech about the Vedas, who say all sorts of grand and glorious things, but with the wrong intent. They lack the resolution of a higher goal. They lack an unselfish ideal in life. All they can think of is, as he says in verse number 43, he says, obsessed with desires and heaven as the ultimate goal of birth and action. Most people even come into the spiritual path simply because it's some totka. See, right now we have how many people in this class? 38 people in this class. Suppose I reveal, I'm going to next class, I'm going to tell you about some totka, you chant it 100 times and something else will get resolved in your life. I don't know, whatever is wrong in your life will get resolved. At least 10 times the number of people will come here. I'm not complaining. Please don't get me wrong, I'm not complaining. People who are in the line of Vedanta know that they'll have to speak to empty halls. Is the truth that's been going on for thousands of years, right? If after 15 years I haven't learned this lesson, that I shouldn't be teaching in this class. Even 38 is a lot. Let's see, we are just in chapter 2. By the time we get to chapter 6, we'll see how many people are still with us. Nothing against any of you. But that's just the way it is. That's just the way it is. Very few people are interested in knowledge for the sake of knowledge. Very few people are interested in spirituality for the sake of true evolution. Rather, this is another avenue with which they get some solace or they get some reassurance that, okay, they will be taken care of. Their desires will be fulfilled. So he says out here, obsessed with desires and heaven as the ultimate goal. For them, God, the spiritual path, is just another avenue. They come and pray for their wishes to be granted, for their diseases to be uplifted, for their problems to be resolved. That's all. And for that they say, do this, do that, do this, do that. On this day, pray to this God. On that day, pray to that God. See, there's nothing wrong with that per se. In fact, see, the beauty of this tradition is that the sages understood how difficult it is for you to think of God. So whatever you think of, they planted God out there. They planted God on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. They planted God in any profession. They planted God in any avenue. They planted God in any field. Everywhere there is a God, right? But if you simply stay in that level, if you don't lift yourselves, then it's of no use. So if all you're doing is practicing several rites and rituals and totkas and this and that simply for fulfilling your desires or resolving your issues, with heaven as the ultimate goal, what can you think of? What is heaven? Heaven is a pleasurable state of mind when either your unfulfilled desires are fulfilled or they are temporary ceased. That is heaven, right? If that's all you can think of, those who are attached to pleasure and power, because all they can think of is, may I enjoy this or may I have more power over this, whose minds are drawn away by their flowery speech. For that purpose, who are obsessed with the letter of the Vedas, who don't understand the deeper message of the Vedas, who don't get into the actual philosophy, the message it is trying to convey. The Vedas are trying to convey a beautiful, very significant message. You have to get to Vedanta, the culmination of the Vedas. If you lack all of that, you have no determined intellect fixed in Samadhi. You are not qualified for Samadhi. For Samadhi, you need Dhriti. For Samadhi, you need Nischay Bhav. अभी हम भजन सुन रहे थे, निश्चय है तो भव सागर से बेड़ा पार हो जाएगा, राइट? स्वामी जी was singing, निश्चय है तो भव सागर से बेड़ा पार हो जाएगा. निश्चय नहीं है तो कुछ नहीं होगा. If you don't have a clear goal, if you don't have true devotion, if you've not dedicated yourself to a higher cause, you will not be able to evolve. So you will have no determined intellect fixed in Samadhi. If the spiritual path, if this journey is just another avenue for you to cater to your own desires, then you won't get far. That's all he's saying. He's not criticizing, he's not cursing you. He's simply saying this is the truth for most people. For most people, they'll come to you if you promise them a miracle, or if you promise them some solution to your problem, because that's all they can conceive, that's all they can think of. So those who are attached to pleasure and power, whose minds are drawn away by that flowery speech, those glorious words of the Vedas, those glorious verses of the Vedas, they have no determined intellect fixed in Samadhi. Samadhi is the purpose of yoga. Samadhi is the goal. Samadhi is the culmination of this journey. I started this class by saying yoga is the spiritual path. What is the culmination of the spiritual path? The culmination of spiritual path is Samadhi. It starts with yoga, it grows to Uparati, Dharana, Dhyana, and Samadhi. The ultimate goal of the spiritual journey, what you want to call enlightenment or self-realization, God realization, or Samadhi, they mean the same thing. So the spiritual path culminates with Samadhi. Interestingly, it's the same sage Vyas who is almost mocking these the practitioners of the Veda. This was relating to a time when Karma Kanda had taken grip. People had become superstitious, and people had become more obsessed with performing rituals and doing rites in a specific, very prescribed manner. They followed more the letter than the spirit. If you ask me, it's not any different from today. Even today, 9 out of 10 people will follow the letter, not the spirit. 9 out of 10 people will be more interested in superstitious beliefs than actual knowledge, right? So it's as relevant today as it was all those years ago. Okay, verse number 45. Traigunya Vishaya Vedaha Nistraigunya Bhavarjuna Nirdvandvo Nitya Sattvastaha Niryogakshema Atmavan. Traigunya Vishaya Vedaha Nistraigunya Bhavarjuna Nirdvandvo Nitya Sattvastaha Niryogakshema Atmavan. He says the Vedas deal with the three gunas. Nistraigunya Vishaya Vedaha. The Vishaya of the Veda are Nistraigunya. The three Traigunya is the three gunas. So the Vedas deal with the three gunas, the attributes. Be thou free, Arjuna, from the three gunas, free from the pairs of opposites. Remain ever in sattva, the purity of sattva, free from acquisition and preservation established in the self. Atmavan, be Atmavan. In a way, this verse has got a lot of philosophy packed into it. And for those of you who are familiar with the subject, you may be able to unfold it more easily. First of all, the Vedas deal with the three gunas, the attributes. Everything in the world is composed of the three gunas. We are all, remember, as I said, every being, every individual, everything is a combination of spirit and matter. Right? Spirit, the Atman, the self, is nirguna, without gunas. You must have heard one of the definitions of God is nirguna. God is nirguna. It means without qualities, without attributes, beyond gunas, beyond qualities, right? Beyond all qualities. So the Atman in you, the spirit, is nirguna, but the matter aspect of you, the sharira, your sharira, is composed of gunas, right? Whether it's at the level of thought or at the level of the gross body, whether it's the level of thought, emotion, or the body, the sthula sharira, the gross body, everything is composed of gunas. There are three gunas, broadly speaking. There are three gunas: sattva, rajas, tamas. Everything is a combination of sattva, rajas, tamas. And this text, particularly the Bhagavad Gita, goes into great detail into discussing sattva, rajas, tamas. In fact, the culmination of this book will talk extensively about sattva, rajas, tamas. So by the end of our journey, we should have a clear idea of what is sattva, rajas, tamas. But the entire subject of the Vedas deals with sattva, rajas, tamas. We are all a combination of sattva, rajas, tamas, and it, depending on what we are, depending on how we are, how to live life to ensure our well-being and ensure our growth. How to live life in a way that ensures our well-being and ensures our growth. There is a specific prescription for a tamasic person. There is a specific prescription for a rajasic person. A sattvic person doesn't need this prescription. How to live so that we not only are taking care of ourselves, but also taking care of the world around us. Because each of these gunas have an impact on us and those around us. Think of the Vedas as a book of medicine that is diagnosing our illness. Our gunas, or our combination of gunas, is sort of our illness in a sense. Tamas is an illness. Rajas is an illness of different degree. Sattva is barely an illness. So tamas, I'll define what these are. Tamas is the state of thoughts in inertia, lethargy, laziness, heedlessness, ignorance, sleep, all of these. The state of thoughts in lethargy, laziness, heedlessness, sleep, indolence, indifference, ignorance, whatever you want to call it. These are all different flavors of tamas. How does this reflect in the body? This reflects in the body as not wanting to move, being a couch potato, procrastinating, not being able to decide, not bothering about anything. Indifference. We're all familiar with this, right? There are times of the day or some days in the year or some places when we couldn't care less. So long as it's not bothering us. If it's not affecting anything of mine, why should I care? That's tamas. A person who is extremely like that, the extremes of tamas, is a criminal. Someone who will go to extreme lengths to do something that is heedless. Oh God, I don't know. Watching the news is so terrifying. Just yesterday anyway, I'm not going to get into it. But there are such, you can see tamas all over. People doing stupid actions out of complete heedlessness, and to a point not even caring about the consequences. Don't you know who I am? That attitude, arrogance, gross arrogance. I alone exist. I alone am important. That is tamas. When I first explained it, it didn't sound that bad, right? Because all of us have a little bit of tamas in us, in different degree. But when that tamas becomes predominant, when that tamas becomes the predominant aspect of us, there's no difference between us and a criminal. Right? A criminal is one who's just gone to the extent of tamas becoming predominant in them. Slightly better than tamas is rajas. Rajas is the state of thoughts in excitement, agitation, desire, lust, thirst, craving. Unlike tamas, there is a clear energy or a direction that your thoughts are taking in rajas. But still, the nature of the thoughts is selfish. The nature of the thoughts is, how can I benefit? What's in it for me? So for that, meeting that end, you will go to great extents. A tamasic person is heedless, but a rajasic person is cunning and manipulative. The extent to which you are rajasic, right? So rajas is better than tamas, because at least in rajas you're doing something. You're not being indifferent. You're not being heedless. You're not being. But rajas is like a chicken running without a head. You're in a rat race. That's rajas. Attachment is rajas. Mindness, the sense of mindness, possessiveness is rajas. Now you're saying, I can relate to it. So, heedlessness, lethargy, indifference, laziness, sleep is tamas. Agitation, attachment, desiredness, craving, thirst is rajas. What is sattva? When your thoughts overcome both the laziness of tamas and the craving of rajas, the state of thoughts in maturity, in objectivity, in serenity, the state of thoughts in awareness, the state of thoughts in detachment, that state is sattva. You've got over the heedlessness of tamas, you've got over the childishness of rajas. You've evolved to become more aware. Sattva is a result of knowledge. When you've learnt, either from the experience of others or from your own experience, you become sattvic. You become more measured. You become more aware of the nature of things. And that's what brings about objectivity. That's what brings about detachment. It's the knowledge which brings about all of this. You can't ask a person to be objective. You can't ask a person to be detached. Only when they gain knowledge, only when they grow, will they automatically turn detached, will they automatically turn calm. So sattva is in effect. Rajas and tamas are more natural. They come without effort. They come automatically. But when you resist rajas and tamas, when you overcome them, when you grow above them, you become sattvic. So the entire spiritual journey, as I said, even before, yoga, the path to samadhi, right? It can also be characterized as going from tamas to rajas to sattva. Your spiritual evolution, how do you measure it? How do you understand where you are on the journey, right? The measurement of your spiritual progress can be done in the form of tamas to rajas to sattva. To what extent have you overcome your tamas? To what extent have you refined your rajas to become sattvic? So the Vedas deal with this extensively, the three gunas, sattva, rajas, tamas. It's a It's a beautiful theory, and it really guides you in your life how to become a better person, how to live life meaningfully, how to be not only ensure your own well-being but be a source of well-being and wellness for others around you as well. If you're tamasic, you'll be a burden on others. You'll harm yourselves and those around you. If you're rajas, you'll be a nuisance. Me. You won't be able to sustain any relationship if you're very rajasic. Give it a couple of months, you'll have a terrible fight with them. Whoever. If you're very rajasic. Only when you're sattvic will you be attractive. Only when you're sattvic will you be able to manage things and people around you. Will you be able to manage your family, your business? Otherwise, you'll manage, but it'll be a rocky road, you know. In Rajas, you'll go through lots of ups and downs. I don't even want to get into tamas. It's a dark, dark place. So the Vedas deal with this. The Vedas deal with the three gunas. But the goal is to be free from the three gunas. Be thou free, O Arjuna, from the three gunas. The goal of the spiritual path is to rise from tamas to rajas to sattva to transcending the gunas. The word for it in the scriptures is gunatita. We have to become gunatita. This comes in chapter 14. Be gunatita. To transcend the three gunas, to go beyond the three gunas, to go from the limitations of the matter of the body to becoming, realizing the spirit. Remember, every being is a combination of spirit and matter. Contained within matter, we are bound by the three gunas. When we evolve to realize the self, to realize the spirit, we become gunatita. We go beyond the gunas. That's what he's saying out here. Be thou free, O Arjuna, from the three gunas. That's the purpose. How do you become free from the gunas? It's a slow process. You can't suddenly become free. You have to rise from tamas to rajas to sattva. The beauty of sattva is that it sets you free. Sattva is described as the pole in pole vaulting. You know pole vaulting? I'm sure Omji knows because he's a sporty guy. I don't know how many of you know pole vaulting. Every 4 years we get to watch it in the Olympics. The current world champion in pole vaulting is crazy. He was beating all sorts of world records even after the Olympics. Every 4 years when it comes, the speaker out here cannot pole vault to save his life, but he likes to watch pole vaulting. So pole vaulting is an Olympic sport. It's an athletic sport in which you take a pole and you use that. It's a long pole, maybe I don't even know how many feet long, right? But the idea is to jump over a barrier which is very high. Now with your legs you can't jump over it. With your legs you can barely jump maybe 1.5 meters, 2 meters, right? I don't know what the world record there is. But to jump over a pole that is 6 meters high, how do you do that? You need the aid of something, right? That the pole is that aid, the pole is that support. So in pole vaulting, the pole vaulter will run with the pole and then stick the pole to the ground and use it to spring up into the air. So the pole helps them spring up into the air. And once they spring up to the sufficient height, they jump across that barrier which they are supposed to cross, right? And are able to complete the challenge. The challenge is to cross over. But in doing that, in trying to cross over the barrier, they use the pole to rise up to the height. But in having to cross over the barrier, they let go of the pole itself. The very thing that helped them rise, the very thing that helped them cross over, they let go of that itself. That pole is sattva. I don't know if you understand pole vaulting, but you should use the analogy to understand this. Sattva is the pole that helps you rise on the spiritual journey, and ultimately you let go of sattva itself to cross over into samadhi. You become gunatita. So just because you have to become gunatita doesn't mean you don't need sattva. Without the pole, you would have never been able to climb to that height. So sattva, the sattvic attributes, developing the sattvic qualities are essential for your spiritual path, right? On the path to becoming gunatita, focus on eliminating tamas, eliminating rajas, and becoming more sattvic. Automatically, as you become sattvic, you'll be on the right path. Right now, you have all these doubts and queries because you're not sattvic. But as you become more and more sattvic, it will only become natural, right? The bondage of sattva is barely any bondage. So free from the pairs of opposites, free from the three gunas, remain ever in sattva, purity. That's why he's equating it with sattva. So being free from the gunas is as good as being forever in sattva, being purely in sattva. When sattva crystallizes, when there is only sattva in you, you automatically transcend, free from acquisition and preservation and established in self. Niryoga kshema atmavan. Yoga kshema is that constant acquisition and preservation which is constantly our pursuit. All through life, all that we've tried to do is acquire, and what we have acquired, preserve. Bhaja Govindam, Govindam Bhaja Mudhamate. Your yoga kshema will not help you. If there's anything you should acquire, it is knowledge. It is vidya. All your material possessions, all your emotional attachments, all your worldly glorifications and aggrandizements, all your respect, name, status, none of it has any meaning. But that's all we're concerned with, acquiring that and preserving it, and doing anything to preserve it. But when you turn sattvic, when you develop this higher goal, the spiritual goal in life, yoga kshema is of no value to you. For those of you who've studied the Bhagavad Gita, you'll be familiar with this word yoga kshema. Where does it come? Anybody? It's a challenge.
भगवान बोलते हैं कि तुम सब मेरे ऊपर छोड़ दो, मैं तुम्हारा योगक्षेम रखूंगा।
आप दो वर्सेस को मिक्स कर रहे हो. यू आर मिक्सिंग अप सर्वधर्मान परित्यज्य माम एकम शरणम व्रज. मेरे ऊपर छोड़ दो. वो तो चैप्टर 18 हो गया. That's chapter 18 verse 66. But you're close. Exactly halfway through the Bhagavad Gita in chapter 9 verse 22 he says yoga kshema vahamyam, right? So he's I'm blanking right now. I just had it in my head. Let's just go to it. I can't believe I'm blanking on this most glorious verse, but we'll go to it. Oh, I went to chapter 11.
अनाश्रित
Ananya Shintayanto Mam Ye Jana Paryupasate Tesham Nityabhiyuktanam Yoga Kshemam Vahamyam. Use the same word out here, Yoga Kshema. Use the same word, Yoga Kshema, and in chapter 2, where we were right now, he uses the same word. There should be some way of jumping back to your previous screen. I haven't figured this out. He uses the same word, Yoga Kshema, Niryoga Kshema, without Yoga Kshema. But he uses the term Yoga Kshema. Ananya Shintayanto Mam Ye Jana Paryupasate Tesham Nityabhiyuktanam Yoga Kshemam Vahamyam. And there he says, you stop worrying about anything else. Ananya Shintayanto Mam Ye Jana Paryupasate Tesham Nityabhiyuktanam. You dedicate yourself to Ananya Bhakti. Ananyash Chinta. No other thought. If you dedicate yourself to the spiritual path, I guarantee you Yoga Kshema. Out here he's saying, be free from Yoga Kshema. Here he's speaking to a more evolved seeker. Eventually the goal of life is to not chase Yoga Kshema. But still people have that worry. If I come into the spiritual path, what will happen to me? What will happen to my name and my career and my this and my that? It may see for a 40-year-old or for even a 30-year-old, it may not sound that much, but for an 18 to 20-year-old, oh my God, all they can think about is what's the next step in my career? What's the next step in my career? Now, life has turned out pretty good for most of you guys out here, sitting out here, and you're all past that stage of career. But for an 18, 20-year-old, they are trying everything to get into the right line and maximize and multiply their wealth and etc. etc. So it matters a lot to them or to their parents. Anybody coming to the ashram, I still remember I used to give tours in the ashram. If you ever came to the Vedanta Academy when I was a student out there, I used to give tours. So inevitably, the families used to come and the parents used to ask me, how has this benefited you? How are you going to work out in your career? How is this going to help you in your career? I had no idea, if you ask me, but I used to try to be witty. I used to question them back. How will this not help us in our career? You attend the class, you will realize how will this not help us? Everything about it will help us. So, Yoga Kshema, acquisition and preservation, gaining worldly benefits, is an obsession of the human mind. Ultimately, on the spiritual path, you have to get over it. But for those who are worried about, oh, what will happen to me? In verse number 22 of chapter 9, he says, you come onto the spiritual path, you'll be taken care of. Don't worry. Yoga Kshemam Vahamyam. I guarantee you, all your desires for acquisition and preservation, you'll get more than you could have ever wanted. Nature will take care of you. You dedicate yourself to a higher path, nature will take care of you. That's what he's saying out there. But out here he's saying Niryoga Kshemam, because he's talking to an evolved seeker who needs to become free from acquisition and preservation. He's talking about that ultimate state. Yoga Kshema doesn't matter. And this is going to reflect in the next verse as well. So, free from acquisition and preservation, established in the spirit, beyond matter, established in the self, Atmavan. And he continues in verse number 46 with a beautiful analogy. The reason I'm saying that he's talking about an evolved seeker is reflected in this verse, in verse number 46. There's a beautiful analogy. We'll chant it together. Yavanartha upadane sarvata samplutodake tavan sarveshu vedeshu brahmanasya vijanatah yavanartha upadane sarvata samplutodake tavan sarveshu vedeshu brahmanasya vijanatah. To an enlightened brahmana, all the Vedas are of as much use as a pond is where there is a flood of water everywhere. Same Ved Vyas who dedicated his life to compiling the Vedas to make them available to you and me, he is saying to an enlightened Brahmana, the Vedas are pointless. What's the use of a pond where there is a flood of water everywhere? It's just another pond, yeah. For most of you who are sitting in Bengal, you go to any village, each village has at least 100 ponds. Pukur, they call it Pukur. You come to Haryana, if you give me a pond, oh my God, it will become a tourist attraction. There's barely any water out here. But in Calcutta, when the water is full everywhere, and there's another Pukur. So what is the use of a pond where there is a flood of water anyway? Where there is a lack of water, a well or a pond is very valuable. But where there is a flood of water, what's the use of a pond? Similarly, the Vedas are like a pond. And for a Brahmana is one who is in a place filled with water. He has no use for the Vedas. The same Ved Vyas who compiled the Vedas is saying a Brahmana doesn't need the Vedas. Now, who is an enlightened Brahmana? That's the question. We talked about Sattva, Rajas, Tamas, right? We talked about Sattva, Rajas, Tamas. The more tamasic you are, the lower you are on the spiritual journey. As you grow, you become more rajasic, less tamasic. But to ultimately rise to higher spiritual heights, you have to become sattvic. A Brahmana is one who is predominantly sattvic. Period. This is the definition. The definition of a Brahmana is one who is predominantly sattvic. No other definition. Any other definition is wrong. This is not me saying it, this is Lord Krishna saying it. He'll say it in the Bhagavad Gita also. Huh? He'll say it out here. The Varnas are based on your gunas. He'll say it in verse number, chapter 18, verse number 41, 42, 43, 44. If you are predominantly sattvic, you are a Brahmana. It doesn't matter what your surname is, it doesn't matter what clothes you wear, it doesn't matter what you eat or what you don't eat. Naturally, you will only eat certain kinds of foods if you're sattvic, right? You won't be a voracious meat eater. It's just the way it is. If you're sattvic, you won't be a sensual, indulgent person if you're sattvic. That's just the way it is. So it is your temperament, your gunas that determine your varna. For an enlightened Brahmana, one who has reached the precipice of evolution, who has reached the culmination of evolution, right, through their spiritual growth, they've become sattvic, they've become crystallized in sattva. For them, the Vedas, the letter of the Vedas, the rites, the rituals, the various other aspects of the Vedas have no use. See, we didn't talk about it. The Vedas broadly have four aspects, right? The Vedas have four aspects. When sage Vyasa compiled the Vedas, he divided it into four aspects. The first part is mantra. So all sorts of lyrical chants, and a lot of them are related to nature, right? The second part is the Brahmanas. The Brahmanas contain a lot of the diverse rituals, and in fact, a lot of the pujas and part we do at home come from this aspect, this part of the Vedas, right? A lot of the pujas you do at home come from the Yajur Veda, for example, right? Then come Aranyakas. Aranyakas are a little more subjective, they're a little more personal, right? They have various methods which they say of subjective worship, which is why it's almost called Aranyaka. Aranyaka means in the forest, Aranya, right? Which talks about, which relates to solitude, which relates to a sense of being solitary and apart from. So subjective worship, directions for subjective worship. But beyond all of these, beyond the mantras, Brahmanas and Aranyakas, lie the Upanishad. Upanishad is that part of the Veda which contains the philosophical teaching, which is a summary of the message of the Vedas, which are trying to be conveyed through the various rites and rituals, which are trying to be conveyed through the various methods of worship, which are trying to be conveyed through the various lyrical eulogies of nature, what we try to invoke in someone. What is the essential philosophy from which it all emanates? That is the Upanishad. That's why Upanishads are called Vedanta. That's why the subject is called Vedanta, right? Because the subject deals with the philosophy of the Upanishad. So an enlightened Brahmana is one who has completely absorbed and understood and applied the message of the Upanishad. He's realized the message of the Upanishads. For such a person, the mantras, the Brahmanas, the Aranyakas, and dare I say, even the Upanishads have no meaning, have no value. Someone who, remember, this is a pole which you use to rise, and once you cross over, you let go of the pole as well. The pole is also useless, right? So of course, no doubt, a Brahmana has used the Vedas to rise, but once he has risen, there's no use for the Veda. He's not trying to diminish the importance of the Vedas. All he's trying to say is that all of this is a means to an end. All your puja part, all your gods and goddesses, all your spiritual practices are a means to an end. Use it to grow. Use them to grow. They are not an end in themselves, right? So, concluding, summarizing, in Karma Yoga, there is a clear goal to which you dedicate yourself. Swamiji had a beautiful definition. What is Karma Yoga? Karma Yoga is the spirit of after you. When you when you're walking somewhere, maybe entering through a door, and someone is also entering through the door at the same time, you take a step back and you let the person pass and you say, after you. It doesn't mean you don't pass through the door yourself. It means you are conscious, you're aware to help others. You are dedicated to working for Loka Sangraha. That's Karma Yoga. So, through Karma Yoga, through Bhakti Yoga, through Jnana Yoga, you use these spiritual disciplines to rise to the state of Sattva, trans Sattva eventually. And this is the stepping stone to Samadhi. Once you are in that state, all of this has no meaning, has no purpose, right? As you grow, the letter becomes less and less important, right? So he's just trying to also remind us that we need not turn fanatic about any particular ritual or any particular practice. One of the reasons why our culture has survived over thousands of years is because we've been able to adapt with times. We've been able to evolve our rituals with times. Because we are not obsessed with the letter, we are more concerned about the spirit, right? So a very important message to help us keep adapting with times. As you evolve, the Veda are of as much use as a pond is where there is a flood of water everywhere. Verse number 47, we'll chant it, but there is no way we can conclude it in a minute, but we'll still chant it, and this is from where we will take up next class. Verse number 47. कर्मण्येवाधिकारस्ते मा फलेषु कदाचन मा कर्मफलहेतुर्भुः मा ते सङ्गोऽस्त्वकर्मणि कर्मण्येवाधिकारस्ते मा फलेषु कदाचन मा कर्मफलहेतुर्भुः मा ते सङ्गोऽस्त्वकर्मणि. Very famous verse of the Bhagavad Gita. In fact, if people remember 5 verses from the Bhagavad Gita, if any random person were to know 5 verses from the Bhagavad Gita, this would be among them. Karmanyeva adhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana ma karma phala heturbhuhu ma te sangostva karmani. Ma means no, not. आपका अधिकार, your right, आपका अधिकार सिर्फ आपके कर्म पे है, उसके फल पे नहीं. Your right is an action alone, never on the fruit of the action. Let not the fruit of the action be your motive, and let not your attachment be to inaction. In trying to understand Karma Yoga, it's a deep subject, and if you ask me, if you understand Karma Yoga, you've understood the Gita. The Gita ji is a eulogy of Karma Yoga. 90%. If you understood Karma Yoga, you've understood the Bhagavad Gita. Because this is the foundational spiritual practice. Without Karma Yoga, you can't get anywhere. You can't do anything. So, one of the most important verses eulogizing Karma Yoga. First and foremost, Karma Yoga doesn't ask you, renunciation is not about being inactive. Renunciation is not about letting go of or renouncing your action. Please. True renunciation is not about renouncing your action. So first of all, do not be attached to inaction. It's the last part of this verse, but it's the first thing I'm going to highlight. Don't be attached to inaction. At no point are we saying you have to become someone who is resigned to the forests. The spiritual path is not for those who want to run away from the world. So let not your attachment be to inaction. In fact, most of us living in the world are attached to inaction. We seek to not confront situations. We seek to not take action. We seek to not try to address the situation at hand. We are attached to inaction. We are like Arjuna, who is not wanting to fight the battle which is in front of him. Attached to inaction. Why? Because there is no clear buddhi to tell us what to do and what not to do. to tell us how to act and how not to act. A rajasic intellect is one that is confused about what should be done and what should not be done. Since we are talking about sattva, rajas, tamas, in chapter 18 he'll talk about this. A rajasic intellect is one that is confused between what should be done and what should not be done. And that's from where attachment to inaction comes. Because you don't have the capacity to think and decide what to do. If at all people act, they act with a craving for the result, and they act with a lot of attachment to the action. I have done this, I am doing this. So they do action with kartritva bhavana or bhoktritva bhavana. So either people don't act, they attach to inaction, or if at all they act, they act with fruit of action as their motive. They act with kartritva bhavana, with a sense of doership, attachment to the action. I am doing this, it's being done by me, praise me, glorify me, give me importance, give me credit. And with a bhoktritva bhavana, what will I get out of this? How am I going to enjoy? Am I going to benefit from this? Is this going to help me? Am I getting any closer to what I'm supposed to achieve? Bhoktritva bhavana. Here he says, let go of tamas, inaction, and let go of rajas, kartritva and bhoktritva. Your right is in action alone. Simply do what you're supposed to do. Simply do your duty. Karmanye vadhikaraste. As an individual, your only concern, your only jurisdiction is on what you're supposed to do, not on the result. Leave the result to nature. You have to do an action because you have taken it up, because you have that duty, you have that responsibility. You have to take up action because you have already received what you had to receive. You are simply repaying. Perform action with the spirit of repayment and not with the spirit of what am I going to get from it. It's a totally different way of looking at it, right? Most of us think, oh, I'm going to do this because I want to achieve something out of it. What if we all acted with the spirit of repayment? Oh, I have received so much, let me act with the attitude of gratitude. It's a totally different way of functioning. So your right is in action alone. Karmanye vadhikaraste, never on the fruit. We'll talk more about this in the next class. But you can also relate it to sattva, rajas, tamas, as I said. Get over tamas, get over rajas, act in a spirit of sattva. With that thought, we'll conclude today. And I'll take up any questions if there are, since we didn't really leave time for questions in the beginning.
When you were mentioning pole vault, in
Hanji.
Buddha's life also, when he saw some people carrying boat on their head, he said, oh fools, why you are carrying the boat on your head? He said, the boat has helped us to cross the river. You see, similar simile is here also. The pole vault is to be thrown away. If it crosses the bar also, then he's disqualified. So same thing. It's a very important thought also. Regarding आपने lakes की बात की, Hyderabad is also having a lot of lakes.
Acha. Yeah, I don't know much of Hyderabad, but yeah, cool.
और वो लेक कोई भी पानी पीने लायक नहीं है.
वैसे तो बैंगलोर में भी बहुत लेक्स होते थे, अब तो लेक ही नहीं है. ओके.
आप बहुत बढ़िया आपने व्याख्या दी. बहुत शुक्रिया सब आपका. वंदना करता हूँ आपको. ऐसे ही हमारे को प्रकाश देते रहिए और हमारा ज्ञान बढ़ाते रहिए. बस.
हरिओम. Are there any questions?
I had to ask one thing. So you spoke about Karma Yoga being a spirit of after you, and in that context, you also mentioned Karma Sangraha. So while you were, did I misunderstand? What was it, sir?
Loka Sangraha.
Not Karma Sangraha.
Loka Sangraha.
So Lok Sangraha would mean what, please?
The well-being of one and all, Loka, the well-being of the entire realm.
Would be Lok Sangraha. Okay, thank you.
So working towards the well-being of the environment around you, people
Yes.
around you, whether it's your family, your community, your nation.
Right. Thank you so much.
People think for Loka Sangra they have to do big and glorious things. Huh? You know what you have to do for Loka Sangraha? If you have a pet dog, you carry poop bags with you when you take him for a walk. So that when he poops in your community, you pick it up after you. That's Loka Sangraha. In America, they do it. I still remember when I used to live in America, they used to have, it used to be very common. Every other few meters, there used to be a pole with, like a bunch of poop bags out there, because everyone who walks their dog, there's that awareness. But if you go into my colony out here, now it's difficult to walk. Why? Because you don't know when you'll step into something you don't want to step into. Heedlessness. We keep our homes clean, but we don't bother about dirtying the environment. So what is Loka Sangraha? It's not about doing big and glorious things. Yes, you could become the RWA president and work towards enacting a policy or something like that. Those are also important things. But at an individual level, if you are not capable or don't have the time to do all of that, at an individual level, Loka Sangraha means small action. Taking care of at least the immediate environment around you, making sure that through your small initiatives you are contributing to. So it's acting out of awareness, right? It's acting out of a sense of consciousness. Yep. Any other questions?
Sir, just one thing about the pole vault analogy. So once you have crossed over, once you're self-realized, you can't stay away from the gunas. I mean, how can I'm just wondering, even if you are living, I mean, if you're living, then you can't be without the gunas, or can you?
Your gunas belong to your body, your mind, your intellect, not to your Atman. To be self-realized means to become one with the Atman. Right now you are one with the body. Right now you're one with the mind. So whatever happens to the body happens to you. Whatever is the state of mind affects you. Right? As you evolve, you become less and less affected. You become more and more objective. Because you're growing detached. You're becoming a sakshi to your body, you're becoming a sakshi to your mind. Enlightenment is when you've crossed over, when there's complete objectivity. So yes, there is gunas. The whole idea of Jivan Mukti, the whole idea of being enlightened in this body means you are one with the Atman while the body is there. So yes, the gunas belong to the body, but you are completely sakshi to it. And to understand that, you need not even become self-realized. Even as you evolve, even as you grow, you become sakshi to your own gunas, right? You let the body function, you let the mind function, and you watch it in and through a variety of experiences. As you grow, you learn to become a witness to your own mind and its fluctuations.
Thank you.
I'm going to spend a minute on this because it's not understood. What I just said is not understood. People think to be evolved means not to feel. People think to be evolved means not to participate or not to enjoy or not to be amidst things, right? This is not what evolution is. Evolution means sakshi bhav. Period. Evolution means sakshi bhav. And honestly, nobody outside you can understand. Only you within yourself know to what extent you are sakshi. See, if you go through a difficult experience in life, evolution doesn't mean feeling less or not feeling. Your mind will feel while you are sakshi, watching it feel. Your mind will grieve while you're watching it grieve. When you're going through wonderful experiences, your mind will rejoice while you watch it rejoice. That is evolution, right? So enlightenment is the perfection of that, when you're a complete Sakshi, right? And evolution is becoming more and more Sakshi. So outwardly, the world will think, see, the world can only understand what it sees. The world can't understand what's happening within you, right? But if you get this message that evolution is Sakshi Bhav, then you have understood.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Yeah, Ankit.
Does it mean you watch the world, watch your emotions as an outsider?
Sorry, Divyaji. Yeah, see, you can call it an out of body experience, or you can call it what you want. The idea is you're watching, right? You're observing, and like I said earlier, sattva is a result of knowledge, right? So even this state, this capacity to be sakshi, is a result of knowledge. As you grow spiritually, as you evolve, you naturally become objective, you naturally become an observer, naturally become a witness to everything that's happening in your life, good or bad. You naturally develop a spirit of surrender to everything that's happening in your life, good or bad. You naturally develop a sense of a connection with divinity. So you gain uh, a freedom from your ego and its attachments, and you gain a sense of connection with divinity. So this happens as you evolve. So that objectivity, that sense of witness, it comes with knowledge. But yes, you are watching while your mind is grieving, right? In this class itself, we've talked about this before. You are two birds. There exist two birds within you. It's a beautiful analogy in the Upanishads, right? You are composed of two birds. One bird, both of them are sitting on a tree. The tree is your body. One bird is eating the fruit, one bird is jumping around the branches, one bird is trying to mess around with the leaves, means engaged. And the other bird is watching the first bird. So the first bird is indulging in the fruit, is if the fruit is tasty, it's enjoying it. If it's bitter, it's rejecting it, completely engrossed in the tree, and the other bird is just watching. So you have these two birds within you. The first bird is your body, your mind, your intellect. The other bird is your, you can call it the spirit, you can call it the Atman, whatever you want to call it, but it's that observer in you. So as you know delve into the spiritual journey, you learn how to become that second bird, whilst the first bird is doing whatever it needs to do in the world, right?
I
So,
want to ask a question. Sorry.
Anji, sorry, are you done? Divesh, are you done? Are you're clarified?
Thank you.
Nitin,
Yeah,
sorry.
I want to ask a question. I'm Nitin Jain here. I want to ask a question. So you
Anji.
mentioned over there that you discard ego, you discard me as you mentioned, and also you would need to move on and evolve any cravings. You have cravings, and then once you do that, you attain the sattvic state.
Hmm.
So, and then you also mentioned, then you gave the example of a pole, which we were all talking about. So, and you also mentioned that the pole is a support. So, what is the support we are looking at to achieve that sattvic state? And why do we discard that? Because I'm just trying to wonder. Because if there's a support, just say, we've got a support, we've moved to that level, and why would we not appreciate that support? Why would we discard that support and want to move ahead?
Yeah. See, the word discard may sound like you're not caring about it, but your question is like asking, why do I let go of my walker? See, right now I have a nephew. He's barely a year old. He's starting to walk with the help of a walker. you know. Imagine 2 years later him saying, why should I discard the walker? It's helped me walk. It's taught me how to walk around. The same thing that helps you grow almost becomes a limitation. It becomes a hindrance. Imagine walking around with a walker when you're 25 years old. It becomes a limitation, right? So, but that you will understand only once you have learned how to walk. So the same is with sattva. It's not that you are not grateful for it. It's not that you don't value what it has done for you, but you just don't need it anymore. That's what we mean by you discard it. It's not that you reject it. It's not that you don't recognize the importance it has had in your journey. It's just that you don't need it anymore. The message trying to be conveyed is that all of these are a means to an end, right? All of these have a specific role on your spiritual journey. Use them to grow. Don't cling on to them.
Right, right. And what is the support? What is that cling? What is that? Can you define that cling or the support?
The pole, as I said, sattva is that pole. So sattvic qualities, sattvic virtues, which come through knowledge, which come through sadhana, is that pole. The more you dedicate yourself to sadhana, the more you develop sattva in you, the more you are able to leap in life, as it were, right? The more you're able to grow in life. So your tamasic tendencies, your rajasic qualities are keeping you stunted. They're stunting your spiritual growth, right? But sattva is that pole which will help you jump high, climb high. And that sattva has to be developed only through your sadhana. So that pole, that support is sattva, for the sake of the analogy, if that makes sense.
Right, right. Okay, okay.
So sattvic qualities are detachment, objectivity, knowledge, purity, unselfishness, whatever all these various attributes, all these various qualities are what help you grow spiritually. Yeah, Ankit.
Oh, great. Yes, so you hinted at, when you were saying that people think that, to be evolved means to not feel, etc., etc. So, when you have this delusion of, what it means to be detached, like what is the actual state you're in, and then how do you sort of go about recognizing it and curing it? Because delusion is something which, where you think it becomes very difficult to sort of extricate yourself from it. Or could.
Okay, I'm not entirely sure what you mean by delusion of detachment, but are you talking about indifference? Are you talking about?
Yeah, indifference, like you said, right? That, people think to be evolved means to not feel, to not have emotions, to not enjoy. So you
First
can
of all, if you think you are evolved, you're not evolved.
Yeah, but then if you think you're evolved, you're not evolved. That's true, right? But then you think so how do you sort of cure it, right? Because you're so convinced how do you realize that you don't know that
The most ignorant person thinks they know. See, this is the paradox. When you have a willingness to learn, it means you have a lot of knowledge. If you think you are evolved, you are not evolved. If you think that you have to work on yourself and you have to keep improving, it means you're evolved. Yadi manyase suvedeti no na vedeti vedacha. In the Kenopanishad, this beautiful line comes. If you think you know, if you think you've understood, sorry brother, you've not understood anything. The Upanishads are saying this. Yadi manyase suvedeti no na vedeti vedacha. Incredible Upanishad. Kenopanishad. So that's just a paradox, right? The hallmark of growth is that dissolution of ego. The first quality of a jnani, again in chapter 13 of the Bhagavad Gita, the first quality of a jnani is amanitvam, humility. Humility doesn't mean thinking of yourself as lesser. It means not thinking of yourself. not thinking about me, where am I, what's happening to me, right? So in a way, that delusion is actually not of overcoming the delusion doesn't mean diminishing your idea of yourself. It doesn't mean that. It doesn't mean of thinking of yourself as lesser. It doesn't mean, oh, thinking of yourself as I am ignorant, I need to know, I need to learn. That's the exact opposite, right? That's an inferiority complex. Just not thinking about yourself. That is spiritual growth. Not being obsessed about yourself. That is spiritual growth. Why do you have to personalize everything? Why do you have to look at every situation and put yourself in the center of it? What is this self-obsession? When you're able to overcome that, then you've grown. People have the habit, no? Suppose you're telling them something. Before you finish, they say, yeah, even I had a similar experience. Even when, hey, why are you talking about yourself? Someone is talking about something there. You feel the need to bring yourself into the picture. Of course, with all good intention, but these are subtle ways in which the ego is actually still there. So evolution or freedom from delusion is not in thinking that you don't know. It's actually not thinking. It's willingness to learn doesn't mean thinking, oh, I am ignorant, I need to learn, I have so much more to learn. No, willingness to learn means just being open. It's as simple as that. It's very simple. Does that make sense?
Makes sense. And then someone who thinks that they know, what is the actual state they're in? Is it tamas? Right.
It could be rajas, it could be tamas, the extent to which that blindness is there. See, if you think you know, so you're listening but only to refute, it's rajasic. If you think you know, so you're not even bothering to listen. I don't really know. It's tamasic. So different degrees of the same thing. Right? One is a rejection, one is a antagonism almost. There's an ego, there's a challenge. So different degrees of the same thing. Yeah. Okay. If there are no other questions, thank you so much for joining and thank you for staying longer. We'll see you again on Thursday and no more long work nights. So I guarantee you there'll be class on Thursday. So we'll see you again. Don't worry. Day after tomorrow. Hari Om.
Hari Om. Thank you.